here in this room today has been stressed today? Can I see some hands? So just today. Who has been stressed in the past week? Past month? Okay, I think we've got 100% almost. Who has had staff complain about stress? Yeah, that's a lot of people. And that is not a surprise to me because I think that we're dealing with what I call a stress epidemic. Stress has become so normal and so acceptable that when you ask someone, how are you doing? A very likely answer is, oh, good, but busy. Oh, I'm stressed. It's become normal to say that. And stress is becoming really quickly one of the top complaints of staff. And stress is having a big impact on all of us in many, many different ways. Stress affects our health. Stress has been linked to all sorts of health conditions like high blood pressure, heart failure, digestive problems, problems with sleeping. It has been linked to all sorts of mental health problems like anxiety, depression, burnout. And there's a lot more because stress also impacts our relationships, marriages, the relationships with our children, relationships with our friends. And maybe you have read somewhere that stress has a massive impact on finances for individuals, but also for employers, and also for society as a whole. Research shows that stress costs Australia per year about 5.3 billion Australian dollars. In Canada, they estimate that stress costs the society as a whole somewhere between 3 and 11 billion Canadian dollars per year. And in the UK, they've researched this as well, and they found that stress, anxiety, and depression cost the UK as a whole between 7 and 10 billion pounds per year. Now, we don't have those statistics for New Zealand, but we can sort of guess a little bit based on the statistics that we find in other places. And when we use those numbers and translate it to us in New Zealand, we find that the annual cost of stress is approximately $2,000 per employee. And as an example, for a company with about 2,000 staff, the estimated annual cost of stress would be over $4 million per year. That is a lot of money. And the cost of stress can be found because people leave their jobs because of stress. They take sick leave because of stress, but a massive part of that cost of stress is that people that show up to work feeling stressed, they don't perform well, they're not productive, they can't focus, they can't pay attention to what they're doing, they're not able to do a good job when they're stressed. And of course, the health system and all sorts of other factors come into that as well when you think of the whole, but this is just an estimate of what stress would cost for the business, the company that you work for, per employee per year. So it's worth looking into ways that we can reduce stress. So what is stress? Let me show you. I'm going to ask you to, just for a moment, close your eyes and imagine a child. It can be your child or another child, a child that you know. Just picture them running onto a road, and at the same time, there's a car coming at high speed. Just imagine that. And then notice what happens in your body. Can you feel your heart racing? Can you feel your breathing becoming shallow? Can you feel the tension in your neck and your shoulders? Can you feel the urge to react, to do something? Okay, open your eyes. This is stress. This is what stress does. This is what it does best. Stress is designed to kick in when there's an emergency situation. When there actually is a child running onto the road, going into a state of stress is really, really good because it helps you to intervene as quickly as possible. Stress within seconds makes you run faster and it makes you stronger, which is great when you have a physical emergency that you have to react to. Now, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes again, and just for a moment, imagine that same scene. You can look at it as if you're watching a movie. So you see the child running onto the road, and there's a car coming. But this time, there is someone standing in between you and the child, blocking you. Just notice what you want to do to that person. Notice how you feel about them. Do you feel the urge to push them aside? Maybe yell at them to get out of the way? And do you notice how you, in that moment, in that situation, couldn't care less about how they feel? Open your eyes again. This is stress as well. This is what stress does, and that is great, because when there is an emergency, you need that tunnel vision. You need to only have eyes for the problem. You need to disconnect with everything else around you. And anything that is blocking you from getting to the solution has to be dealt with as quickly as possible. This is great when there is an emergency. When there's no emergency, it's not so great. Because when it comes to social interaction, when it comes to relationships, when you're stressed, you lose the capacity for empathy, for kindness, for putting yourself in someone else's shoes and seeing what it's like for them. When it comes to stress and relationships, stress brings out the worst in you. When you narrow it down, there's 3 states that your brain can be in, and the first one I call the red brain. That's the brain state that we just had a taster of. The red brain is a state of stress where you disconnect from people emotionally, and that is very, very useful for emergencies. So stress, the red brain, equals the emergency brain. If you put that red brain on one end of a spectrum, on the other end of the spectrum you find the green brain. The green brain is the opposite of the red brain. In the green brain, you are calm, you can connect to the people around you, and you can be highly productive and efficient and effective. So you can see this as a spectrum with red on one end of the spectrum and green on the other end of the spectrum. And in the middle, I put the orange brain. Orange is sort of the neutral middle ground. It's the brain state that you're in when you're focusing on achieving, focusing on getting things done. I sometimes call it the to-do list brain. And there's nothing wrong with the orange brain. It works very well for getting things done, and it doesn't have the downsides of the red brain when you think about connection and when you think about health and physical symptoms. It doesn't have the cost of the red brain, but it also doesn't have the benefits of the green brain. Because in green, you are at your most effective, your most productive, your most flexible, most creative, most connected. In green is where you come up with brilliant ideas or solutions to problems. In red, you just do whatever you've done before, and if that doesn't work, you just try harder. So green really is the ideal brain state for anything but emergencies. And where you are on the spectrum doesn't fully depend on your circumstances, because that's what a lot of people think. They think, oh, well, when I'm on a holiday in Fiji, yes, then I can be in green, but when I'm looking at my inbox and there's 150 emails I have to answer, of course I'll be in red. But where you are on this spectrum doesn't fully depend on circumstances. To give you an example, you can be working on a very challenging project with a lot of time pressure and being green. Have you ever had that? That you were working on something, maybe something that normally you wouldn't even enjoy, but you're fully focused, fully engaged, under pressure, and you can still be in green. And you can be, for example, lying on the beach in Fiji with a cocktail in your hand, and you can be in red brain. You can be lying on the beach in Fiji, sipping a cocktail, feeling angry and frustrated because the hotel isn't exactly what you had expected or what the travel agent told you it would be. The waiter got your order wrong. The kids on the beach are being too loud. It's too hot. Have you ever been there? Or you can be lying on the beach in Fiji in orange brain, where you're not actually in the moment, you're not actually present or enjoying it, but you're thinking about all the things you want to get done that day, all the sites that you want to visit, all the places you want to see, all the souvenirs you want to buy. And then as you begin to rush the family so they can stick to the schedule that you had planned out, it doesn't take much to end up in red. So our circumstances are not fully responsible for the brain state we're in. It's our thoughts and how we are able to manage our thoughts and to manage our stress. The red brain works hard. The green brain works smart. It's not the circumstances, it's your brain state. Whenever you're in red, you'll be exhausting your body, you'll be exhausting your brain, depleting it from its resources. When you're in green, you perform better, you feel better, you're healthier. The red brain works hard, the green brain works smart. And the end result is that, yes, with red, in the red brain, you can get a lot done. You can be successful, you can achieve things. In green, you can get a lot done as well. You can achieve things, you can be very successful, but you'll also be happy and healthy. And you won't be damaging your system as a result. I'd like to ask you a question. I'll just go back to the three brains. Just take a moment to think about which of these brain states you spend most of your time in. Do you spend most of your time in red, feeling stressed, rushed, disconnected? Do you spend most of your time in orange, focusing on the to-do list, focusing on everything that you have to get done? Or do you spend most of your time in green, being present, calm, connected, and still productive? I always ask this question when I train teams and when I train people, and the most common response is that a lot of people spend their time in orange. That's when they spend most of their time. And as things are ticking along nicely, that's where they are, and they're getting things done, and they're feeling okay. But as soon as something goes wrong, they switch to red, and they stress out. And then at some point, they'll go back to orange, where they focus on goals, getting things done. And they tend to reserve the green brain for special occasions, like 8 p.m. in the evening with a glass of wine, or that Fiji holiday. But as I just explained, your circumstances don't fully determine where you're at. It's your thoughts, it's your brain. It's how well you're able to manage stress. So how do we get more of the green? That's usually the question that begins to form in people's minds. It's not that complicated. You get more green brain activity by practicing it. The more you are in the green brain, the stronger it becomes, the easier it becomes for your brain to go there. You can think of your brain as one really big muscle that you can literally train. You can rewire your brain. You can train it to be more in green. And just like, for example, when you do push-ups, your muscles become stronger, the push-ups become easier, the same thing goes for your brain. The more often you practice the green brain, the stronger that becomes and the easier it becomes for your brain to go there. And this process is called neuroplasticity. You can think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid with millions and millions of roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. With directed attention, you can learn how to switch on the green brain, and the more often you do that, the stronger those roads and those pathways in the brain become, and the easier it becomes for your brain to travel that road. They've studied this extensively, and they find that within as little as 8 weeks of mindfulness practice, they can see physical changes on brain scans in the stress center of the brain, the amygdala. That's 8 weeks. That's not months. It's not years. It's 8 weeks of actual physical change showing up in the brain. So mindfulness is one of the most powerful tools that I know when it comes to training the green brain. Mindfulness activates the green brain, and it does it by certain ways of paying attention, breathing, reshaping thoughts, posture. There's lots of different ways you can practice and use mindfulness to activate the green brain. So I'm a big fan of mindfulness, and I'm not the only one. Luckily, mindfulness is finding its way to schools and businesses and community programs everywhere, and that's great. And if all of this hasn't convinced you yet of the importance of the green brain and working on stress through mindfulness, let me share a personal story with you. I have always lived in the red brain. I've always been a very high achiever, a perfectionist, and as long as I can remember, I always had the feeling that no matter how much I achieved, it wasn't good enough. Even though I was the first one to do a postmaster's, or the youngest one to complete a postmaster's at the University of Amsterdam, I graduated with honors. I got a lot done, but it was never enough. And then I was introduced to mindfulness, and in the beginning I thought, oh, that's just some spiritual mumbo-jumbo, that's not for me. But then in my postmasters, it was actually part of the training, and I began to learn that mindfulness isn't Buddhism. Mindfulness is brain training that is backed up with a lot of research that we know is effective. And when you know how the brain works and when you know how stress works, mindfulness just makes sense. So I began to practice mindfulness not by meditating for long periods on end, because I just couldn't do that. That's not me. My brain is way too busy for that. But just little moments of it, little moments throughout my day. And what I found is that through those simple and short exercises, I started having moments of clarity and moments of peace of mind, which was quite a revelation to me, because my mind was always racing. And the more I practice those short exercises, the more I practice those mindfulness techniques, the more frequent those little moments of peace of mind and of clarity became. And I noticed that overall my stress levels started to reduce. But what for me was even more of a transformation is that as I was practicing the mindfulness, which is all about being kind and non-judgmental and paying attention, I noticed that harsh and critical self-talk, that little voice in my mind that always said that no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough, became softer and softer. I learned how to be kind and forgiving towards myself, which was a new concept for me. And where in the beginning I feared that reducing the stress might also reduce my dedication and my motivation and my drive to do well, I found the opposite is true. Now, most of the time, I'm in the green brain, with occasional moments of red. But when I am in red, I recognize it, and I'm able to bring myself back on track through mindfulness. And I find that I'm more successful and I'm more dedicated than ever before. The difference is that this time around, I'm actually enjoying it. So, to wrap it up, I really believe that we're having this huge problem in our world called stress, and it's not going to get any better. And it's affecting all of us in one way or another. It's affecting our health, it's affecting our well-being, it's affecting our minds, it's affecting our finances, and our children even are now stressed. We have higher rates of anxiety, depression, burnout, even suicide than ever before. So stress is not the only factor in that, but it's definitely a contributing factor. And my contribution to a solution for that is to make mindfulness exercises, mindfulness techniques that are quick and simple and free, accessible to as many people as possible. What I want you to think about is to make stress management a priority for your staff, to take it from the bottom of the priority list and move it to the top. Because this is not just about saving your company money. This is people we're talking about. Their health, their mental health, their marriage, their relationships, and that's important. And if we combine efforts and this mindfulness movement that is all over the place already, which is great, I think we really can make a change, one green brain at a time. Thank you. Mindfulness is a research-based way of retraining your brain. And it has been practiced by many different people in many different cultures and in different religions.